This meeting is being recorded and live streamed on YouTube as a way for members of the public to participate. Please state your name when you're making a comment or asking a question. I will ask that you keep your microphones on mute when you are not speaking. We will now begin the meeting with a roll call of all the members. Amy?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. When I call your name, please unmute and let us know your affiliation. Patricia? Yeah. Zach? Emily? Emily Karen, I see you. You're on mute?
Yes, present.
Thank you very much. Tanya's proxy for Joshua Clark.
Present, and I took over for him.
Oh,
think
yes.
we
Sorry, yes,
discussed
you
this.
did.
No
Thank you
problem.
very much. Thank you. Vice Mayor Ellis.
Present.
Thank you. Chair Ernst.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Friedel. Cindy Garcia.
Present.
Thank you. Laura Guild. It indicated she'll be coming in late. Christy Hahn McDonald.
Present.
Thank you. Elizabeth Herbert. Samantha Hinchey.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councilmember Hodge.
Present.
Thank you. Marilyn Kasanick.
Here.
Thank you. Kevin Mattingly.
Present.
Thank you. Councilmember Norton.
Present.
Thank you. Amy Offenberg.
Present.
Thank you. Carol Park Aiden. Chris Charlo.
I'm present. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Melissa Thomas. Madam Chair, we have quorum.
Thank you. Our next item is a call to the audience. This is the opportunity for the public to comment on items that fall under MAG's jurisdiction that are not on the agenda, or that are on the agenda for discussion and not for action. Members of the public can submit written comments via the MAG website up to 2 hours prior to the meeting. Amy, do we have any written comments on this item?
Madam Chair, we have not received any comments for any item on this agenda.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Then we will go ahead and move to item number 3. There are no informational items for this meeting, so we will move on to 4. Our next item is the approval of the January 23rd, 2025 meeting minutes. Do we have any members of council who have any questions?
Madam Chair, if I may, we had received a few revisions to the minutes. If it's all right, I'd like to share those on the screen so everyone can be very clear on what those changes were before the vote's taken.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Minutes, here we go. We've received a few different changes. We appreciate everyone's attention to the minutes. The first one is to the spelling first and last name. Sorry, Tanya. So that has been amended. The next change is on page 6, and that is to some of the information that was provided by Councilmember Norton. Those changes have been made as well. Noting that support has since been gained with newly elected council members, and clarifying that El Mirage Cares did not move forward with the presentations during school assemblies at the school at that time. And then the last change that has been suggested so far, pending any others that might be offered, is it's on page 12. We misspelled ACES. It should be ACES DV. And Madam Chair, those are the changes I've received so far, and are happy to make any other changes that that additional members might want to make at this time.
Thank you. The floor is open if there's any additional changes. Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll move to approve the minutes as presented.
And I'll second it, Councilmember Hodge.
Thank you, Councilmember Hodge. So we have a motion from Councilmember Norton and a second from Councilmember Hodge. We will now take a voice vote. Members participating online can take part in the voice vote by turning on your cameras and unmuting your audio. For those that cannot or do not want to turn on their cameras, we will conduct a roll call vote. Members, please leave your cameras on until after the roll call vote. Give everybody just a minute to get their cameras on. Can I have a voice vote for members? Those in favor say aye, those opposed say nay. Oops, those opposed say aye.
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 Those opposed say nay. Amy, is there anybody that we need to take a roll call vote on?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Patricia, how do you vote? Patricia? Madam Chair, the motion carries.
Thank you. All right, thank you for the motion and it carries. We'll move on now to item number 5. During the January 23rd, 2025 Regional Domestic Violence Council meeting, the committee voted to recommend approval of the proposed committee structure with the goal of aligning regional activities with local priorities. A draft operational plan has been developed to implement the new committee structure when it is approved. A joint planning retreat with other MAG Human Services committees is scheduled for March 18th, 2025. The activities for the event will include action on the operational plan to activate the new committee structure. The plan includes criteria for membership and the process to select members for the new committee. The committee will be invited to offer input on the draft operational plan. Informational sessions are also scheduled to gather additional feedback. The document can be refined based on the input received and will be presented for action on March 18th at the retreat. Please review the attached materials. This item is on the agenda for information and discussion and will be presented by MAG Community Initiative Director Amy St. Peter. Thank you, Amy. The floor is yours.
Great, thank you very much, Madam Chair. Tyler, if we can go to the next slide, please. Excellent. So all of you received the copy of the operational plan. This has been drafted with feedback that's been received to date. We do have 3 listening sessions and we'll offer those dates in just a few moments. But the purpose of the operational plan is to help us implement this new committee structure. So you voted on the new committee structure last month. That will go forward to Management Committee and Regional Council then in April for final approval. Once that's been approved, then we'll start implementing this new structure and we'll be looking to this operational plan to help guide that implementation. So one of the key factors in it is the membership of this new committee. If you recall, we have 3 different ways that people can participate in this new structure. The first one is in the committee, and you see some details laid out for you there. The second is through the action teams. Action teams will be convened on very specific topics, and then they'll disband once their work has been completed. And then the third opportunity is through the stakeholder list. The stakeholder list will be subject matter experts who will be on call to assist in whatever ways are of interest to them. So for example, if there's a report that's been developed and we want to have it reviewed by experts in the field, we would look to that stakeholder list. Also, the action team membership would be open really to anyone, but particularly we would be inviting members of that stakeholder list if they want to engage on a particular topic at a particular time. What you see in front of you on the screen right now details out the committee membership. I do want to point out that we would have a standing seat for a domestic violence leader at all times on that committee. It's very, very important to continue this work, and this work can and will be continued through the action teams, but we want to make sure that at least one person, probably more than one, but at least one person sitting on the committee will have domestic violence as a high priority and will have expertise in that space to help guide activity in this space moving forward. In total, the committee will have 21 seats, 14 for local and tribal governments, MAG member agencies. That includes an even distribution between East Valley, West Valley, Central County, as well as from our Native nations. And we'll have 7 seats for the community leaders, and that's where the domestic violence seat will come into play. We're wanting to make sure that we have key sectors that are represented on the committee, and that would include the philanthropic community, healthcare, business, faith, for example, in addition to domestic violence. As we solicit ideas for the action teams, each year we'll issue a call for projects. Anyone can offer an idea for a project. Anyone can respond to that call, and they would be outlining what the action team would do, what the scope of work is, a timeline, the deliverables. And then that would come back to the committee then for selection, and the committee would develop a strategic direction each year on the basis of the projects that have been identified in response to that call for projects. Some of the criteria that we'll be using to select those projects is making sure that it's regional. If a project is proposed and maybe it's with one or more communities, but not quite regional, we would look for ways to scale that project up. So for example, if it's a pilot project on a smaller geographic level, we'd want to make sure that we could scale it up to the regional level. Of course, all of these projects, the intent would be to improve people's lives and to strengthen communities. We very much want to make sure that we have a strong data component in this work, and that we're very clear on what those performance metrics are. So how do we measure the difference that has been made as a result of this project? We also want to be sure that we're not duplicating existing efforts. And so we would be assessing those ideas for the action teams and making sure that we're integrating it and coordinating with existing efforts absolutely as much as possible. It's more sustainable, and it's honoring the work that's already underway. And then the stakeholder list, that's where we would really cast the wide net and look for those subject matter experts who can assist us on an ongoing basis. But the idea with this is to retain and to continue to strengthen the relationships that we've built up over the past few decades since we've been engaging in human services planning here at MAG, and that we would be more action oriented and nimble as a result of this change. If we can go to the next slide, please. These are the listening sessions that I was talking about. You're actually the first committee to be able to see the operational plan and comment on it as a group. The other committees will have these opportunities, and you are more than welcome to attend these listening sessions as well. We'll have 2 in-person sessions, the first of which will occur next Tuesday. And then the second one would occur on March 6th. Both of those will be held at the MAG offices on the 2nd floor in the Chaparral Room. If you haven't been to MAG in a while, or if you've never been to MAG, if you park in the garage under the building, we can validate your parking. Please bring that with you for validation at the meeting. We will also have a virtual session, and that's actually where we're getting more RSVPs. So that will occur on Monday, March 3rd. And if you would like to participate at that virtual meeting, please let me know. I'd be happy to send you the meeting invite that has that Teams link in it. With the operational plan, we'll be refining the plan on the basis of feedback received here today from you, as well as any feedback that we might receive at any one of these listening sessions. We can go to the next slide, please. Oh, if we can back up one, please. So that's the extent of the presentation. You did receive the document. I hope that you've had a chance to look at that, and really do welcome any feedback that you might have or ideas that you might have to strengthen it, and any questions that you might have to clarify any element of it. Madam Chair, that does complete my presentation. I'm happy to address any questions.
Thank you, Amy. Do any of our members have any questions or comments? I know it takes a while to get off of mute, at least it does for me, so I'm going to give everybody just a couple more seconds here. All right, hearing none, then we will go ahead and move forward. Amy, again, thank you for that presentation. I really appreciate it. The next item is on the agenda for information and discussion. The Arizona Coalition to End Sexual and Domestic Violence will offer a presentation on the 2024 data regarding the fatality review teams, shelter usage, and other topics of interest to this committee. I'd like to turn the floor over to Samantha Hinchey.
Thank you, Chair. I really appreciate it. Just really quickly, I'm not talking about fatality review teams because we did that last time, but I am talking about the fatality review or the fatality list for Arizona.
Thank you.
So I apologize for that. Okay, so just so you all know, I am not an expert in the like the work that's being done to make sure that people are in shelter. That is someone else at the coalition. So I'm going to do my best to answer whatever questions you all have. And I just have a really short PowerPoint for you all. So can we go on to the next one? Oh, just so for those that don't know me, my name is Samantha Hinchey. I am the Director of Victim Services. I was formerly part of the Domestic Violence Response Team, which is our training and technical team at the coalition. I've been there for 8 years. So if you need training and technical information, I know a lot more about that than I do about this, but I learned a lot while making this little PowerPoint, so I'm just really excited to be here with you all. And I've been on this committee, I think, for 7 years, so almost the entirety of my time at the coalition. So just really happy to still be part of it. Looking forward to the future. So we're going to talk about shelter a little bit here first, because that was one of the main points that I was asked to talk about. And so just so everybody knows, we have 433 beds here in Maricopa County. Next slide, please. So for those that aren't aware, there's been some changes in the way that survivors here in Maricopa County can access shelter. So for about 10, 12 years, and honestly, there are some people here that can probably speak better to this than I can, but for about 10 to 12 years, we have had a centralized screening phone number for survivors to call to get shelter here in Maricopa County. This is the only place it's like this. This is in Maricopa County here in the state of Arizona. If you go to Pinal County or Cochise County or Yavapai, they have their own hotlines to get into shelter. But here we have a centralized screening number that was housed at one of the DV shelters in Mesa called a New Leaf. So it was housed there for many, many years. And there was some conversation a couple years ago that it was just felt that this should be moved to or just revamped. And so there were meetings with stakeholders. Cindy was there from CPLC and others, and they came to this meeting basically like once a week, once a month to talk about what this can look like here in the county. And what came out of it is that we were going to move this from a new leaf to Solari. So Solari is kind of our 211 or our centralized number of like where people can get services. So the phone number did not change for Safe DVS, and I just realized I didn't put that on this slide, but I will send it out for everyone if you need it. But the number didn't change. It's just being held with Solari. So they've had this for about a year and a half now. They've been doing this. They've been doing a really good job of working through some of the technical difficulties. The difficulties with, we get a lot of phone calls for shelter here in this county, and we're going to look at that in just a minute, but they're doing a really good job of sifting through all of that and talking to the programs that need to be aware of the changes and things that are happening with survivors and their need for shelter. So how it's going so far, it's going pretty good, I think. Cindy, I feel like it's going pretty good. We're pretty happy. And I mean, there are some things that need to be worked through, and we are in basically we go to a monthly meeting where we can talk through anything that might be going on with shelter beds, with Solari itself, with any questions that the applicants might have and the program managers might have for Solari at the time. In fact, we just had a meeting a couple hours ago. And I wanted to also say that there is a screening process, and the screening process was worked through with these within these meetings that happened for about a year and a half. And we came up with 7 questions, and by we, I added 1 question. So I say we, even though I wasn't at the meetings, but I added a question. So which was obviously about pets, because pets are important. So there were 7 questions there, and that's all they asked them, is they asked them 7 questions. There's not they're looking for lethality, but not necessarily. And we wanted to make sure we were screening people in and not screening people out. And then the rest of the questions, once they get to shelter or they get to their community services like Shelter Without Walls or Pathways, they're going to be asked other questions. And so these 7 questions are just to make sure that they're getting their needs met with Solari, whether they need a bed or they need community services. That's what these 7 questions determine. So next slide, please. So now I'm going to show you the bed roster. It's very hard to see, and I apologize. And Amy, feel free to send this out if you need to, or I can send it to you in a PDF format so that people can see. The bed roster stays with the coalition. So we made it, our CEO made it, and there are several different parts to this, but I just took a picture of the bed roster so you can all see kind of what they're looking at. So every organization that has beds basically keeps they have a staff person that keeps on top of this bed roster throughout the day. And so they come in and they say, we have a room, or like, we have a bed, we have a room, it's a single, it's a double, it's for a family, whatever. And then Solari can go in and see it themselves, and they know that they can go to CPLC or they can go to a New Leaf and there will be a bed waiting for that person. And so they can contact that organization, and the organization can tell them, can go through whatever process they go through then with the survivor or with Solari. And so I just thought it was interesting just to see what this looks like. There are other parts of it. There are, well, let me just look real quick what the other parts are while I have it up. So the other parts are, there's actually a shelter list. So it talks about all the shelters that are part of Maricopa County, so that the organizations can go in, they can change who the staff contact person is. They can change if they are, if they take pets, like if they weren't taking pets, if they are taking pets now, so they can go in and change whatever needs to be changed. And then as you're looking at it, this is the bed inventory. So that's what we're looking at right here. So those 433 beds, that's what we're looking at. It's just a snapshot of that I took this morning. And then we have community-based services. So we have like Doves, for example, is on here, and like it talks about everything that they do. And so Solari and the other programs know everything that Doves does, or Chicanos por la Causa, or Eve's Place. And then they've got outreach for all of those. And then they have a special populations that is a page, so that the folks know if there's a special population like 50 and up, that they can call Doves and Mary can take care of them. So, or Alice or somebody. So that's kind of the way that bed roster is held at the coalition. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so I got these numbers from Solari, and what we are looking at, which was really nice of him to make a chart, but what we're looking at is folks that are qualified for shelter versus placed in shelter. And as you can see, it is a remarkable difference. And in the next slide, I'm going to show, I'm just going to go a little bit more into depth, but as you can see, so we have the people in blue, those are callers that qualify for shelter. We have orange that are referred to shelter, and then we've got the gray that are referred to DV stop. So just an interesting take. And there's no qualifies for January of 2024. And he told me it was because they were trying to figure out a better system. They were using an old system and trying to figure out a better system. And they finally figured it out in January. But so they don't have qualifiers numbers in January, but the rest of them are pretty accurate. Next slide, please. Okay, so this one gives us a little bit more, it kind of breaks that down as well. So we've got inbound calls volume. So in February of last year, it's 2,438. So they're getting a high volume of calls. And there are very few working, and so at Solari, they have folks that are trained. Everyone at Solari is trained in behavioral health. But at Solari, the folks that work on the DV hotline, for shelter, they are specially trained in domestic violence. They took some trainings from us. They take trainings practically once a month on different things. They've been trained on the intersections of domestic violence, intimate partner sexual violence. They've trauma-informed care, trauma-informed supervision. So we've done those trainings for them, as well as others that have done trainings for them. So we have inbound calls. We have the answer rate is around 15 seconds. It's pretty great. Unique callers. So these are people that have never called before. And so that's an interesting, that's interesting to me. I always want to know. And so Eric, who runs Solari, basically told us today that 1/3 of callers are unique and 2/3 are multiple repeat callers. Very telling that we just don't have enough resources for folks. So if you can click like the space bar, I've got two little pop-ups. So last February, the calls per bed ratio comes out to 19:1. So I did a little math this morning, not a math person, but did a little math, had someone check my work and everything. But, and then in October, I was told that it was 25:1. So just interesting. And then, so we're only able to provide shelter to about 5% of the calls. So I thought that these were, I just wanted to break down these two slides a little bit more so that we get that 19:1. I think that that is fascinating, just to talk about shelter here in our county. All right, now we're going to move on. Next slide, please. So we're going to talk about the helpline. No one asked for these numbers, but I thought they were fascinating. And I also am the director of the victim services that supports the helpline now. So I just wanted to share with you all what this looks like. So next slide. At the helpline at ACES DV, so this is the statewide sexual and domestic violence helpline. And the reason why we're not a hotline is because we're not open 24/7. So if we were open 24 hours, 7 days a week, we would be a hotline, but we're not, we're a helpline. So we are open 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, except on Tuesdays, we're open till 7. So we have 2 victim specialists that are on the helpline, and we have 2 bilingual victim specialists. Who are fielding all of these calls. So in 2024, we had 2,593 calls. We had 1,852 texts. We had 182 chats, and we had 234 emails. And then I wanted to showcase what my next slide, if you want to go to that, I wanted to have you all read and showcase the narrative that came from the folks on the helpline. I'm just going to let you all read that, but I just to show you what they're kind of working on. On top of this year, until September, we have rental assistance. Just so everyone knows, if you're working with folks, we've got rental assistance until September or until it's exhausted. So please have them email the helpline if you have survivors that are interested. But this is one that I pulled this morning, and just to give you, I mean, I think it's so, I think the folks that work on the helpline are amazing. And so I just wanted to give you just a moment of just seeing what they work on every day. So, all right, if we can move on to the next, we're going to move on to the fatalities. Okay, so this is 2024. Fascinating year, my friends, fascinating. So if we want to skip to the next one. So in 2024 so far, we're still working. It takes a long time to do fatalities. So we had 60, actually there's 61. She added a new one this morning. So there's 61 fatalities to report. This is what it looks like, and this is where you can go to find it. I wanted to put this on here. Now, why this is fascinating is like we continually average over 100 a year in the state of Arizona. So to see it be 60, I don't know why, but fascinating. Like, I'm so curious. And something that we'll be working on, at least what I hope that we're going to be working on, is doing an average for a 20-year average. So some of you might remember that we had a 10-year average. We did 2005 to 2015, which was 105 survivors a year. That's what it averaged. And I'm hoping we can do a 20-year survey here in the next, that'll probably come out next year, so that we can be able to talk about Arizona as a whole. But fascinating that there was only 60. And if you go to the next slide, I pulled a narrative, and I'll be honest with you, the narratives aren't really narratives. I literally just copy and pasted this from one of the stories that is part of this. And this is how little information we get in news stories that deal with domestic violence. This is it. This was all fit on one slide. Doesn't even fit on the whole slide. And so I just wanted to show that this is how survivors are written about. This is how these cases are written about. It's just a small little blip in whatever news story that is. So our goal and what we try to work on is making sure that these folks continue to have a name and not just a number, and continue to be remembered, not just as a number, but as like a human being that suffered from domestic violence. And our fatality list is not just people, not survivors, but victims that died, but it is anyone who is connected to this. So it could be roommates that were killed by an abuser. It could have been law enforcement that was killed by an abuser. It could have been family that was killed by an abuser. And this can include family and partners and folks like that. So yeah, that's it. Does anyone have any questions, comments, concerns? Cindy, yes, please, my friend.
Thank you for presenting this, Sam, because I think it's so important to look at the numbers. I have Mayani, our program manager of the shelter. She's the one that attends the meeting, so I miss out on these like nuggets of information sometimes. But I definitely think that for our state, we need to look into housing and economic empowerment for survivors, because the more we connect survivors with these resources, the less time they're at shelter. We need to move them out of there. Like as soon as they come in, trying to connect them with resources, shelter's not the best place to be. Nobody wants to be there, you know? And so obviously they want to be there to be safe and everything, but at the end of the day, they need their own home. They need their privacy. That is their safety. And that's how they will start their healing process. And so I honestly think, Sam, the numbers, just an idea, I think, of like why the fatalities are lower this year. I feel that because of like COVID funding, we just have had a lot of extra funding for housing, and we've been moving people out really quickly, I feel, at the Colores. And like, we also have that housing funding that you have until September. We have it too. And so we've been moving people out of there, and we have an economic empowerment program right now at the Colores. We have one more year of funding for that grant. So I hopefully, you know, with how everything's going with funding right now, hopefully we can continue that. But I think that is the key, is that is definitely needs to continue to happen. We need this type of funding to and not just and shelter too, because even shelters, they need support too, in operational costs and stuff like that. So I think that a lot of shelters do struggle with that, including ourselves. And so, but there's just so many other moving pieces than just shelter. We need to think about like, how do we move people out of shelter and find just to sustain housing too, and not just give people housing either, because they need to be able to sustain it, because it's so expensive. And so I think it's we really do need to connect with Maricopa County and see what we can do to support that.
Thank you, Cindy. And I'll be honest with you, there are rumblings and conversations all across the country, federally and in other states and other coalitions, about the change of shelter. The shelter model needs to change. And so like, there's this small conversation. No one really wants to, this is my view, no one really wants to rock a boat and like have a conversation, because we understand that emergency shelter is really important, but it also needs to shift. Like there's going to have to be a shift at some point, what emergency shelter looks like, because of that, because of funding, because we know that housing does keep people stable. And I also wanted to point out to Cindy, and I know that I'm super biased on this, but like, I also think that you guys are able to move people out, and like some of this has gone down because we have more shelters taking pets in across the state, because we know that a lot of people are not leaving because they don't want to leave their pets behind. So thank you for that. Burdetta, did you want to ask a question or comment?
Yes, I want to ask a question. I'm a data person. So I was wondering, do we have any data that can show what like the rest of the state or nation look like in the last couple of years on, on fatalities? And also, is there any data on the, because we talk about moving them, but if you can move a person, but if you don't move the mind, what is it about the social emotional part? How are they still in therapy? Are we following along with that? Because that right there, is a big part of it, because you can move physically, but if you're not emotionally set in the same spot, how's that working? I'm just curious on those numbers too.
Um, I don't have numbers, but I do have information on like I'm just gonna use, because all I know is what we're doing with at CPLC, but we have wellness groups that we've gotten amazing, beautiful funding to be able to do wellness groups for survivors and just going beyond talk therapy. And so we that continues, like the healing piece always continues. So we have the shelter and we have a community base. So once survivors are moving out of shelter, they go into community-based services. And so that continues until they feel that they are good. So we don't tell them when they can stop going. They can continue to use the services as needed. We're there for them no matter what. So they can come back and forth if they like. But we do have those type of services too, where we offer healing art studio. We offer dance movement, and just like for them to build community and just find other ways that is more sustainable. Because it's so hard sometimes to even get to a therapist or get, with work and everything and the kiddos, or even just getting an appointment, is hard too. So there are those pieces happening as well.
Thank you.
And I just want to say I'm a huge fan of support groups. I think support groups are wonderful, and people can go to those for the rest of their lives if they want to, whatever that support group looks like. And so we do agree with that. But sometimes, I'll be honest, there is data to talk about that housing is the number one need. And like once people have housing, then everything else for them kind of falls into place. They feel like they can go get therapy. They feel like they can go do healing modalities for themselves once they feel like they're in a stable place and they're not like on this brink of homelessness or having to stay in a violent relationship. And so like that is one thing that, I think they go hand in hand.
Okay. Sure. But what about is there any data points to what I was talking about, the fatalities? Can we have any points on that? I'm curious to know. Yeah.
There are, but I don't have them with me right now because I wasn't asked to pull them, but I can, so I wrote it down. So I'll make sure that Amy gets those, and I'll get that for you.
Thank you so much.
Of course, thank you. Councilmember Norton?
Yes, I have a question. With having 1,550 that had qualified for shelter, and yet 119 replaced, and then DV stop was for the 198. What have we tracked anything in regard to those who qualified but were not able to get shelter? And what's happening with those people? If they qualified, then clearly they're in a domestic violence situation that is not a safe situation. So what are we doing for those people?
So as far as I know, if they can't get into shelter because shelter is full, which is the majority of the reason why people don't go into shelter when calling Solari, the majority of those folks are then given community resources to help them support them until they can get into a safe, stable home. And then some people do find other means of shelter during this time. So like they may reach out to friends and family, they may reach out to coworkers, and so that they're still safe. And some may have to stay, and that's just the reality of it. And so hopefully they're able to access advocates or organizations that do community work, that outreach work that we were talking about.
Do you know, are we tracking them at all, or to know, if they're successful and
It's really hard to do that. One of the things that I've learned over the years, and please, for those of you advocates out here, please let me know if I'm wrong. But one of the things that happens is that like we don't a lot of times get to see the end of someone's story. Like we just don't get to see that. And so like, and when we do, when we get like a thank you email or a thank you card about like them, like us saving, like then it's so gratifying for us to know that they made it, that they're safe, that they're stable, that they're okay. But we don't necessarily get to see the end of people's stories as advocates. And so it's hard for us to be able to track that. And it may not be safe for us to call them or keep in touch with them after we have done the work that we needed to with them, because it's their healing journey. And if we're
Right.
not part of their healing journey any longer, it's not really needed for us to track what services they're using.
okay. And then you've commented several times, and this clearly shows that housing is so important,
Yeah.
and there is a serious lack of it.
Yes.
So, do you have, I mean, it'd be great if we can come up with some ideas as to how we can solve that, confront that, and get more, because
Yeah.
that seems to be very critical to this.
So this is I mean, you're 100%, you're 120% correct. Like this is the biggest need for survivors. And just so you all know, I don't know if Amy sends this out, I cannot remember, I'm so sorry, but there's something called DV counts. So every year, usually in September, there's a day that's chosen. And in that day, all of the programs in that state basically document the needs of survivors. And this year we did really good in Arizona. We had 97% participation, which is the highest it's ever been. So yay us, we're so amazing. And I'll tell you, the report hasn't been released yet, but I've seen like a pre-copy of it. And housing is always every year the #1 need for survivors when they contact a shelter or a DV program or a program that's on the list. And so housing is our #1 priority. And so we are trying to also work with housing organizations. We have people that work in DV that are on the coordinated entry, coordinated response here in the state, the COCs, all of those rapid rehousing. Like we have DV folks in all of these spaces trying to make sure that survivors' voices are heard and that we're advocating for survivors in those housing spaces. We need more, I'll be honest with you. And you know what? Advocacy Day for the coalition is February 27th. And if you want to come and talk to our state legislators, we would love to hear your voices. The survivors need more people advocating for them with legislators face to face. So that's what I would say. I would say come to Advocacy Day. We will feed you. And let's talk more about housing and more about funding, because that's really what it comes down to.
Very good. And unfortunately, I will be out of town, but
Oh, dang it.
but thank you. And I think that's probably a big part of the work, because without that, it's very difficult to get them into a safe place.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the questions. Councilwoman Ellis, please. Yes.
Thank you, Sam. Really appreciate this presentation. A lot of my questions had been also answered, but the last one that I had was concerning how do we tell the story? How we get people interested to tell? You saying that when you pull what's been written about the fatalities and what's been happening here in that space, it couldn't even fit. It was so small. It was too small to even fit on one slide. As everyone was talking, housing, we know is #1 component. Getting mental health to follow through is another component that can go hand in hand. But the telling of the story is awareness. Now, some agencies have to be in charge of that. They have to. We can't. I don't think we should be waiting on the news, because they are trying to sell bites. They are trying to sell what's the most sensational for people for just a minute, and then it goes on to the next. Is there a way that as these organizations are coming together to collaborate to do all these things, that they could add a component of storytelling or media with this kind of platforms that we have right now, where we can tell story on any one of those platforms about different things like that? How can we get someone to rise from this existing group, to say, okay, this will be part of us. We will be that voice. Is there someone doing that? Or how can we rally people together to make sure that happens?
So I don't know. I mean, at the coalition, we try to support as much as we can. We try to make space for survivors in every aspect of our work. And we try to make sure that we take it, like we have a survivor advisory committee at the coalition that is about 200 people. And so with that, we train them to speak about their experiences so that they can go out into the community and share those experiences with advocates, with just anybody who wants to hear. They do interviews for ABC 15 and Telemundo and all kinds of things. And so we have a survivor advisory committee that really, like, the Speakers Bureau piece of it, it's about them healing and telling their story out in the community. And some of them are even nationally known at this point for telling their story, because they like, that's just the path to healing that has worked for them. I think, Councilwoman Ellis, I think that people like yourself that are doing, the candlelight vigils and the commemorating that has to happen for DV survivors that are still alive and for DV victims that are not. I think that those things are important for awareness. I think that those things don't have to wait until October to happen. I think they can be year round. And so whatever that looks like in everyone's community, that's how it starts, and just bringing more awareness. And so, like in Chandler, for example, where you and I are part of, we do our stuff in September to give voice for survivors and for other organizations to do things in October. And so, like, there's things that can be done year round. But as far as like sharing stories, like, I really love to highlight the Speakers Bureau and those survivors that want to tell their story.
Okay, the last question I have, thank you. This was very enlightening to kind of get an idea what we can continue doing well, and what else can we add to that to enhance the whole idea of getting the story out. Would you say that if any one of us on the call have a commission group in our cities, we can also task them into doing, as they do things throughout the year, to always have a component in there where there is a storytelling, or inviting the news or themselves, putting the word out, that will also help to elevate the voices?
I think yes. I think it just depends on the purview of the commission. So like in Chandler, for example, we do a lot of things that are like tabling events to support Chandler residents, but we're not necessarily planning things. And so, like, in that planning thing, so we tell our story in that. So in Chandler, on that commission, we do, as you know, we do a morning like event in September, and in that we do storytelling. We have survivors tell their story. We have it in that space versus year round at other events that we're doing. But if it's within the purview of the commission or the council for that city or that county, I say yes.
Well, this sounds like definitely we are on a path now to be able to push this. And I do agree that housing is the number one, because in Chandler we don't have really shelter beds per se. And so the reason why I think things are moving for us quickly is because as soon as we interact with someone, we temporarily put them in a hotel, and then from there it's housing directly. So that's been helping for us. That's the model we're using, and it's helping us tremendously from letting people be in limbo, because you can't really survive or continue to to take a breath if you don't know that you have a place to live in and you have a place to stay. And then that's the hierarchy of survival. You have to be able to have a place to stay. You have to be able to know where your next meal is coming from. And then the next part, for you to continue to thrive and become better and overcome the trauma. Thank you again for telling us all this today, and I appreciate you.
Thank you. And then Bernadetta.
Yeah, I have one more question. It was actually not a question. It's a question and a statement.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
in Tempe, we do have a lot. We do a lot with our housing, with our shelters, right? So we buy hotels, and even with our unsheltered, it's domestic violence. If a case comes in, they can go into the shelter too. My question is, and we say this is a regional effect. Is there any way that we can go to, and I know we're talking about state legislators, but I don't have as much confidence in state legislators. I would love to. They haven't been going our direction on a lot of different things. My question is, can we do something with Maricopa County, like with our Board of Supervisors? I know they have their own budget. Is there something that we can get together within the cities in Maricopa County and see if there's something we can do regionally when it even renting out or buying hotels to get more beds for our families in need? I'm just wondering, because I know we talked about the state legislator, but how do we get to the county to get on their I don't know if they do already. I could be talking about something that's already being done, but I just want to know, is there anything we can do regionally within Maricopa County with the city, the county and the state, as much help as we possibly can?
Bernadetta, I love that. I do. I love it. And honestly, I'm a firm believer in that the counties run Arizona. So
Yes.
I'm here for Maricopa County and City of Phoenix, in all honesty, supporting and helping in any way. And City of Phoenix does a lot. They do. I
Yes.
want to give them credit. They are doing so much out here, but I do think that Maricopa County could be a really great utilized resource. And I'm going to leave the rest of that question up to Amy. Because I don't know. But I did want to just really quickly, I feel like Mary Lynn has been unmuting herself, and I just want to give her space to talk because I feel bad that I haven't yet.
Yeah, I couldn't find the raise hand thing,
It's
so
okay.
if you can have Amy send out the slide deck is what I was just wanted to ask.
Thank you.
Madam Chair and members of the council, the presentation is already posted on the MAG website. So if you go to committees and then Domestic Violence Council meetings, it's right there along with the other slide deck. So
Okay, thank you.
right there for you.
Thank you, Amy. Samantha, I do have one question. With the group that meets monthly with Solari, do you know how agencies can get involved in that if they're not already communicating with Solari
So
on this particular topic?
from my understanding, it's only the programs that are part of the DV network. So it's those organizations that that house survivors and do outreach. So we need to have Shelter Without Walls, Ease Place, Pathways. They are also at the table. And so that's my understanding. So if anyone is interested, I can definitely ask and see what that looks like. It's not my meeting, it's Solari's meeting. And so DC, if you're interested, please let me know and I'll see what I can do.
Yeah, that would be great. I know I'm not the only one here that also represents a city's crisis intervention team, and we often come in contact with victims right after the incident. And I think some of the experiences that we've had with trying to get individuals help might be a better heard in the meeting with Solari.
Okay, Cindy.
Awesome, I appreciate that. Well, Samantha, thank you so much. Great. Oh, Cindy, go ahead.
One more thing really quick, because I just went 2 weeks ago. So our organization just became members of the National Women's Shelter Network, and they have been giving us, they're super new, they're only 2 years old, but we went over to go speak to our representatives for our state. So they had a bunch of organizations. It was all women. It was all of us from each state, and we all had had what we were going to say, and, just so that they can allocate funding for shelters. But that's another really good resource. They have so much information. So just to put that out there. So it's National Women's Shelter Network, if you want to look into that.
Thank you so much for that recommendation. I appreciate that. Well, before we let Samantha go, anybody else have anything for her? All right, seeing nothing. Again, thank you so much, Samantha, for being here today and sharing all that information. It was great information. We're going to go ahead and move to item 7 on the agenda. Are there any requests from membership for any item on future agendas? All right, hearing none, we'll go to the next agenda item, which is comments from the committee. Are there any comments or announcements from the membership?
I have.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry, this is Councilwoman Norton. I just wanted to report back in regard to the teen dating violence community forum that we had last Wednesday on the 12th. And it was very well attended. About half of the audience were teens, boys and girls, excuse me, which was great. And I'm losing my voice.
We'll give you a minute. Well, Councilmember Norton, I don't know if you know you went on mute.
I'm sorry, I'm trying. Okay.
That's okay.
Anyway, one of the things that I will note, we did have a teen survivor speak, and it was very, very impactful. And so it's, I think, knowing about the Speakers Bureau, first of all, with ACES DV is great. This speaker actually came from the Southwest Family Advocacy Center, but it was very well attended, and we really, it was encouraging to see that there were parents and teens that were interested, involved, and we had the high school even invite us to go out and present information. No programs, but we were able to at least present information and brochures to the kids, to the students. So that was great. Thank you.
Thank you, and great work on continuing to work towards ending teen dating violence. We appreciate your efforts. Thank you.
This is Patricia, and I have a question or a request. Can Samantha and Cindy send that information, how we can get that assistance for the victims, for relocation funds and financial assistance?
Yes. Well, I'll say it out loud real quick, which is just helpline@acesdv.org. So you can have, it's great to email, because then they'll email you back the application. And then just to let people know that you're working with, it takes 2 weeks, around 2 weeks to get approval. So not as long as some organizations, but not as quick as others. But I'm new and I'm the one reviewing them, and I take a while. So, but we are also getting like 10 to 12 a day. And so that takes a long time. And, but yeah, so helpline@acesdv.org. And then if Amy wants to send it out or put it somewhere, she's more than welcome to do that.
And I
so
can send the information too. I have, for the Colores, they just have to do an intake. And our phone number is 602-269-1515.
Okay, and so do you want us to do the initial contact and then send them out the application, or you want us just to refer them to you one-on-one, both of?
Either or.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Excellent. Any other comments or from the membership? Seeing none. I want to thank you all the members of this council, for their service. I look forward to continuing this important work with you through the new Community Initiative Coordination Committee. hard to say altogether, that is forming. As a reminder, the upcoming Human Service Retreat will be on Tuesday, March 18th at 10 a.m. Those who attend the upcoming retreat will have the opportunity to help shape the creation of the new committee. So again, if housing is the issue we want to take forward, please be there and let your voice be heard. And with no further business, today's meeting is now adjourned. Thank you all for being here.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you to everybody. That was awesome. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Sam. Great presentation. And thank you, Madam Chair. That was good.
Thank you, Amy. Talk to